all applications have been restarted. Now let's open up Postman. And what I want to do is send a request to customer microservice. There we go. Status code 200. Now let's open up the Zipkin dashboard. And in here, what we're going to do is, so you can see that it says find a trace. So just pretty much click on run and then query and have a look. So have a look in here. We kind of have a bunch of requests, but one, so a few seconds ago, this is from the Eureka server, and that's because we did install it. But the one which I want to show you is this one here. So customer right here. So this one, which has 5 spans, and the duration was, so this was actually quite slow. I think it's because on startup, it takes a long time, but I'm going to send yet another request. So we see some improvements in here. But in here, what we can do is we can expand this, and you can see that this is the trace ID. And then these are all the microservices which are involved for this trace. So we have customer, notification, and fraud. So let's go ahead and click on show and check this out. So this is kind of cool. So you can see that the request started on customer, and this was the path. So post API v1 customers, and this is the time that it took right here. So this took 2.798, almost 3 seconds in total. But I think it's on startup, things are a bit slow. But then from customer, we made a request to fraud. So have a look. So at this point, somewhere in customer, we made a request to fraud, and this was API v1 fraud check, passing the customer ID. This was really quick. And then we send a notification in here. So after the fraud check, we then sent a notification. So we can click on this individual call in here, and you can see some more information. Have a look, the controller class, the MVC method, the client address, the same for post in here. And if I click on that, you can click on show all annotations, and then you can have more information. So the server start time and the finish time. So you can see that this is really cool. Also, you can basically download the JSON in here if you need to. But have a look in here. We have the duration, 3 services involved. The depth was 2, and a total of 3 spans with 1 trace ID. Now, what I want to do is send yet another request. So I'm just going to keep things as is, send, and this time you can see that it was much quicker. So in here, let me click to find a trace, run a query. It was this one right here. And now it didn't take 2 seconds. So this time it was super fast. Have a look. So this is really cool. So almost 400 milliseconds. You can click on show and you can see all the information. Now you can see that the Eureka server is actually generating a lot of noise. So let's click on show, for example. And depending whether you want this kind of information, if you need it, which I kind of doubt. Now, one thing is, so for this Eureka server, we're not storing the results to a database. So before you saw that we could store the results so that if this server crashes, then we have the data intact. So currently we're not doing that. Finally, if you click on dependencies in here, let me just click on search and have a look. So this is currently the flow for our microservices. So let me see if I can zoom in. No, zoom in doesn't really help in here, but basically I think there we go. So you can see the arrow which is going all the way across to fraud, and basically customer interacts with fraud as well as notification. Now, if you have a bunch of microservices, then you'll see all of these different arrows going to whatever direction they have to go. So this is pretty much distributed tracing, Zipkin, and Spring Cloud Sleuth in action. Now, one thing which is kind of cool is that you can also, so if I click on find trace in here, so you can see that this is actually generating a lot of noise. So if I go to IntelliJ and open up logs, I basically want to grab this trace ID in here, go back, and in here search by trace ID, paste that in, and in here you see that we don't have the time it took to perform the database query, right? Because we are storing to a database from customer in fraud as well as notification. So currently we didn't configure the instrumentation for database calls, but this is something that you can do so that you have a better view on what happens in your backend. But you can see, for example, if this service right here, fraud, is taking, let's say, 2 seconds, then you know that there is something wrong in this microservice, and then you have to diagnose. The same for notification, right? So if notifications are taking a long time to be delivered, then you can basically use this to debug your applications. And finally, I forgot that you can actually search. So in here, if I click on find a trace, I can click on plus and then have a look. Service name, we've got 4 services currently. So I can click on, let's say, fraud, and you can even combine these. But if I run the query, have a look, these are the results. So this is pretty much all for this section. If you have any questions, please do let me know. Otherwise, let's move on.